Hello, everyone. Ron Presley here with Catfish Now, and I've got a guest in the studio tonight from Arkansas, a familiar face to many of you. Daryl Masingale is going to talk to us a little bit tonight about fishing on the Mississippi River. You fish with your brother most of the time, I guess.
Yeah, we try to fish together as much as possible, but there are times we separate and have a little fun without them.
And I noticed you had a third angler in Helena last week.
Yeah, we had Matt Bingham in the boat, the guy that really introduced us to catfishing on the Mississippi River.
Well, given your experience on the Mississippi, I mean, you've had a lot of it. So, how do you describe that fishery to people?
The Mississippi River can be pretty daunting, pretty overwhelming, but it is probably the best fishery in the United States. It is absolutely loaded with catfish. From eating size fish all the way up to these giant trophy fish that we chase. Whether you're fishing for channel catfish, blues, or flathead, it has it all in great numbers. So if you've never been, it'd be a good place to put on your list of waters to fish.
Well, is there a single best method to use on the river, or do you kind of have to know all of them?
I'd say to be really effective at catching fish on the Mississippi River, you need to be able to fish all the methods, because on any given day, there isn't necessarily one method that is the best. When the fish are really aggressively biting, the bouncing or the moving or the drifting techniques are really, really productive. But nowadays, where the bite is a little bit more finicky, if they're not so aggressive, you may need to go to an anchoring method, to sit still, to give them time to find the bait. They may come, ease up to the bait, and they may sit there for, 2 or 3 minutes, trying to decide what they want to eat. That's what we feel like sometimes.
Yeah, right.
So that works really effective. And then there's another method that some people have heard of, of back bouncing even. Where you anchor your boat up and then you walk baits back through the structure or back through your fishing holes you want to go. In that method, you're able to move the bait a little bit, but it's very controlled. You can go really, really slow. And we've had times where that worked for us, when the anchoring, sitting still, and the bottom bouncing, drifting was not productive. So, what I've always told everybody is you can catch catfish just about with any method you can dream up. You just got to find the right application for it. And as we said before, practice makes perfect. And anytime we go out, try something new, because you don't ever know.
Yeah. Well, how about before you actually go? What are the factors that you're looking for as you plan a trip?
For the rivers, because of the rain and the flooding seasons, and even the summer seasons when it gets really dry, these rivers levels change. So with the different river levels, it will determine kind of how we want to go out and fish. In a flooded state, we probably aren't going to be out in the main river channel. We'll be up in the shallower waters where these fish are moving out on these flats to feed. In the middle of the summer, when the river is really low, the river pulls back out into the main channel and it kind of congregates fish out there. The current can be a little bit slower as well. So that kind of congregates them there and puts them in a place where they're easily accessible. So that'd be our number one thing to look at, is just, see where the river levels are, and, let that dictate, what your plans are on how to prepare.
Yeah, so that's also going to dictate method and so on.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. That's exactly right.
Well, how about bait possibilities? What are you looking at there?
Of course, skipjack is king. Anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that bait is hard to beat. But even when we don't have access to skipjack, there are other opportunities out there. The Asian carp, can be really, really good. Shad is always a good possibility. Sunfish, we've done really good on sunfish before. In buffalo, just any kind of rough fish, you can cut up for a piece of bait. The blues especially, they're pretty opportunistic. They're not going to turn a nose up at a fresh cut piece of bait, no matter what brand or species it is.
Yeah, well, there's that age-old question about heads or chunks. Have you got a preference?
I like the head just because they stay on the hook better. I mean,
yeah,
We caught them on chunks, on fillets, on the tail section. We caught them on every piece out there. Well, I just like the head because when you put the hook in it, if you do get a bite, you don't have to reel up the check to see if the bait's gone. 9 times out of 10, you either got a fish or you don't.
Or you don't. Yeah, and you got a good expectation that bait's staying on there.
That the bait is still there on your bait. You're not having to check all the time.
Well, let's kind of close out with the safety aspects. Mississippi River, a lot of people are just plain scared of it.
Yeah. The Mississippi River, the first time I went over there, I pulled up to the ramp, looked at the water passing by, turned around, I drove home. It was too much for me at that point. But, went out with our good friend Matt Bingham, and he showed us the do's and don'ts on the river. The main thing about the Mississippi River, it's big, it's wide, and it's got a lot of heavy current. Probably the 2 or 3 main things you got to be really concerned about on the river is one would be your dikes. When the river is really low, the dikes are really easy to be seen. When the water gets up a little bit higher, those dikes can go underwater and they do become a little bit harder to find.
Yeah.
Most I'll say not all, because not all of them are, but most are marked with the red and green buoys. They'll position them on the outside end of the dikes. So be sure to stay inside the channel, those 2 buoys when you're moving up and down the river.
Yeah.
And watch for the ripples on the water where you see that water going over those shallow dikes as well.
Yeah, it shows up a little at least.
Yeah, it shows up a little bit. The main thing is, if you're moving up and down the river, try to stay in between those buoys. That's kind of your safe spot. Second thing would be, floating debris, trees and logs and stuff like that. Whether you're motoring or whether you're anchored up. Even when you're anchoring, you can have some of these big trees floating down the river that can get into your anchor rope that can cause you some harm, I guess you want to call it. Just always be vigilant, looking up river when you're on anchor to see, if you see something coming down towards you, pull off your anchor and move out of its way. And third, of course, is the biggest one that everybody seems to be afraid of, and for good reason, is these barges.
Oh yeah,
they are huge. I mean, they're pushing 35 tows or barges at a time, and them barges weigh up to 1,000 to 1,500 tons each. So,
oh my goodness,
they can't stop. Once they get going, it takes them a long time to get stopped. So always give them the right of way. And what you got to realize is, they've got to be making turns, a mile in advance of where they're going to get out of the way if you don't move. So always give them a wide berth. They'll honk their horns. You don't ever want to get to the point where they honk their horns. That's not a good thing. But, just give them wide berth, and when they pass you, be sure you don't get straight behind these boats, because they do produce some really big prop wash waves.
That reminds me. Yeah. That reminds me, at Helena, there was a little. I guess the barge captains were calling in about people not giving way.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. And I think in that situation there, people was up in front of these barges, and they was a half a mile or a mile away, and they thought that they was well out of harm's way. But like I said, what they don't understand is those barges take a long time to get turned, so they need you to move out of the way so they know that you can get. They don't know whether you're broke down from that far away. If you're not operable, they don't know whether they need to stop then or not. It costs a lot of money to get them things started and stopped, and they can't do that for every boat that gets in the way. So
exactly, yeah.
But we got to share the river with them. They're on it every day of the week. That's how they make their living. We're out there having fun.
Yeah.
We try to find areas that's not in their paths, but there's occasionally times where that's where the good fishing's at. They like that slow current too. So just give them wide berth, and try to be courteous.
Yeah, well, those are some great tips, especially with Mississippi River Monsters coming up next month.
Yes,
I'm sure you'll be looking forward to fishing that.
We love that river that time of the year. That's when the really big fish get to feeding up for the winter, and the river levels are usually really good. So we expect to see some really big weights, and we hope we're one of them.
Well, thanks again, Daryl, for coming in with us tonight and talking a little bit about the Big Muddy.
Yeah, thanks, Ron.
We appreciate it. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. There you go. Fish with passion.